guys, welcome back to another current video. Make sure to subscribe, and yeah, let's get into the video. So guys, this is what it's about. Why is this Roblox game is dying? 3, 2, 1, let's begin. Why is that? Chisel will explain it. 3, 2, 1, let's begin now.
Today, we'll be exploring Roblox games that are once super popular but died out over time. And stay tuned to the end to see if you remember any. Also, please subscribe. Alright, firstly, let's start with our first section being viral games. You know, games that are once popular, or some of the biggest games that are slowly dying out. And let's start with one of the biggest games released within the last year being Obby But You're On a Bike. This game absolutely exploded when it first launched, and I feel like it kind of reinvented obbies on the platform. Because now, there's literally an Obby But Anything game. People have written this concept like crazy because of this game blowing up. And I feel like it also kind of revived obbies on Roblox. Like, it literally kind of escaped them now. And this game in like under a year
has pretty much, I think it's that Fortnite has the same one, Obby on a Bike.
The game launched,
so yeah,
kind of blowing up.
Fortnite and Roblox, they both copy. Well, Fortnite copied Roblox, so yeah.
And then died a little bit to like 30,000 players, but it's still pretty consistent. However, now if you look at it, you're averaging around 7 to 10k people active, which is a pretty big drop, you know, from 70,000 to 7,000. The game definitely is dying out over time. To be fair though, the game is massive, it definitely isn't going to completely die out, and 7,000 players is still pretty good. However, in the grand scheme of the game, it is definitely dying.
Oh, an ad.
And I feel like for this game, it's very obvious why it died out. As you guys can see by the title, they're on World 35 now. When the game first launched and was first blowing up, every world was very exciting, and every update was very exciting because it would add some new content to the game, some new mechanics, and stuff like that. Over a year later now, 35 worlds later, you know, it kind of runs dry after a little bit. And after this much worlds and this much, you know, gameplay, a lot of people probably just got bored and moved on. Because there's only so much stuff you can add to the worlds, there's so much mechanics you can add, until people just kind of feel like they're doing the same thing over and over again. And also with that being said, with this game blowing up, there's not a lot of competition of people using a similar concept and putting like spins on it that people would rather play instead, you know? The game's still doing very well, but is dying out over time. Speaking of which, next we have Doors, which once again, this game obviously isn't fully dead,
not dying,
but compared to the numbers, it is dying out over time. Once again, as you can see by the chart,
it's impressive they have like more players,
and then so the updates, and they've averaged hundreds of thousands of players, and they went from that like 30,000 every day to around 15,000 every day. So once again, still pretty massive game. Obviously, it's not going to go anywhere, but it is dying out over time. However, to be fair to them, I still think most players are waiting on a still pretty major update that they haven't released yet. So to be fair to Doors, the game definitely will probably come back when they release that major update. However, the more time they go on without releasing it, it is dying out over time. And with that being said, our next viral game being Ultimate Driving. This game used to be everywhere. It's definitely like the biggest driving game. However, it has died out over time. 430 million for this, but the average around like 1,000, 2,000 people every day. And the reason this game died is actually kind of interesting. There's a lot of stuff going on. As we can see here, people in the community made like 1 hour long videos about why the game's dying and stuff like that. But basically from what I've seen, there's like a lot of problems with like the developer, and then like GameFam I think bought it for a short period, but they're not under GameFam anymore, and a bunch of other stuff. It was crazy. Like I said, this guy made like an hour video talking about everything, which is crazy. But even though they aren't under GameFam anymore, and like all the stuff's in the past, I think it permanently damaged the game and the community, you know? If you look deeply into this community, everyone's saying the game's dead, and it never will be what it used to be. And with that being said, our next viral game being Bake the Baby. Once again, a viral game that kind of popped out of nowhere, and a lot of YouTubers started playing it, but it has slowly died over time. 90 million for this now, but around like 3,000 people active. For all these viral game sections, the games are still obviously doing good because they've gotten so much visits and the game's gotten so much popularity.
I would say this is like just like lots of games are getting popular, like Blox Fruits, Pet Simulator. Well, Pet Simulator, it's like popular.
For like years. However, it still can hit like 10k, 15k players just because it's just
Jailbreak. It's still alive, but
and once again, I think this game kind of died just because people probably got bored of it over time. And also with that being said,
I know
feel like
you can type in the comments down below what I missed, like, but yeah, type which Roblox game are dying
because they already saw the YouTuber do most of it. And speaking of which, our last game in this section is I Want to Test the Game Beta Test. To be fair, it is still in beta, but once again, another game that kind of blew up here.
I played that before. You in this stream, remember this? I played this before.
This game is designed to be like super hard and like super rage-inducing. So as you can see here by dislikes, most people end up just probably disliking it and leaving. So you know, a lot of players aren't returning. And once again, this game kind of blew up on YouTube. So I feel like a lot of people, number one, went and played it and it was too hard and left. Or number two, just watched like a YouTuber beat it because it was too hard for them. But to be fair, the game knows what it's doing, and they obviously know a lot of people are going to get mad and stuff like that, so this is kind of understandable. And with that being said, in our next section being trend games, which are majority piggy games. And what I mean by this is games that were just hopping on a trend. And majority of these are piggy games just because that was a major trend a few years ago, and most of them are dead. For example, the first game here, we have Bacon.
This one is dead.
million
300,
visits, but 300
dead.
people active, maybe a little bit more during the day.
Definitely dead.
And this game has completely died out. To be fair, I think it's one of the most successful, kind of stealing that piggy concept during that era. I mean, the game was massive, but once again, I feel like they're kind of hopping on like that piggy style game, and they added their own like pretty good spin to it. However, over time, this game just died out because it was just hopping on that kind of trend, which also kind of died out, Piggy games, stuff like that aren't in demand that much anymore. Which, speaking of which, next we have Ronald, which was the exact same thing, where you're getting chased around by Ronald McDonald. It had almost 150 million visits.
Zero!
However,
It's dead!
Here,
Completely dead!
this content
It used to be
so
popular.
people active. Now, what happened to this game is actually kind of interesting because no one really knows why it got content deleted. However, on the wiki it says that the main speculation is that McDonald's probably sued them or took it down, because the whole concept was using like this Ronald McDonald, which is from McDonald's if you aren't aware. So a lot of people think the game just got, copyright stricken or whatever, and the game's gone now. Which, to be fair, it is kind of unfair to say the game's dead, because, I mean, it literally is dead, but it kind of wasn't their fault. I mean, they knew what they were doing, but, I mean, the game doesn't have a chance to get players. But it still is kind of cool to look at, a game that big get deleted. And our next game is Bear Alpha, which, I mean, it's been in alpha for so long, but as you can see here, 290 million visits, but around 600 people active. And once again, it was a similar thing. A piggy style game. They did add their own spin to it, which I feel like gave it kind of a boost and advantage. However, once again, that whole piggy style thing isn't in demand anymore. And especially with piggy ending, I feel like it kind of ruined all these games, because if people are going to play the main thing is based off, people are not going to play the clones as well. You know what I mean? But with that being said, our next thing isn't a piggy game, but it is still hopping on a trend being a Pyrophobia. 300 million visits, but around 2,000 people active. Which once again isn't bad, but not as good as it was doing before. And this game did have their own spin to a lot of stuff, and they are doing pretty good still, because they are kind of expanding. However, they were initially kind of hopping on that whole backrooms trend and kind of recreating that when that was blowing up. And I think that's why this game kind of died out. Because during the whole backrooms thing, this was very high backrooms on Roblox, but when that started dying out, this game also people lost interest. And with that being said, our next section being classic games, super classic old games that are died out, that were super massive. Starting with Bunny Island Theme Park, which has 56 million visits, like 5 people active, and it was made in 2015. A very classic roles game. And I feel like the reason for this one dying is a number of reasons. I mean, number one, it's old. It's very rare to see a game hold up for that long, you know what I mean? And also, with that being said, I feel like this concept on Roblox, this theme park concept, aren't as popular.
An ad.
Or just because they're kind of basic. And with the game being this old style, it doesn't have much mechanics or anything like that crazy.
With
and on Roblox now, with all like the modern, stuff, you can get some crazy theme parks.
Modern games are being like popular. They're like popular now. Unlike old games are like getting like old and they're like dying out. So yeah.
An absolutely iconic, massive game. This game is 700 million visits.
Zombie Rush. I'm surprised that it's still going.
So it has died out. But it was created in 2013. So once again, kind of old, and also kind of an old concept, like this whole zombie concept, which isn't as popular in roles anymore. I feel like that used to be a huge thing, the whole zombie rush, be a zombie, or hunt down the zombies. That isn't as big of a thing nowadays. So I feel like it kind of died out just because of the concept, and it is an older game, Like I mentioned, it's hard for these old games to stand up and hold up for all these years. But they have done kind of a good job at it. And our next classic game is Escape McDonald's Obby, which once again was deleted. But this game was massive. As we can see here, this is the game content deleted, but 208 million visits, but obviously 0 people active. But this game was super iconic. I don't know if anyone remembers that super kind of low quality Escape McDonald's Obby. It was kind of a dumb game, but it was massive, It had 200 million visits, it was doing very well, but the game is deleted. Once again, no one knows the true reason, it seems like, why it was deleted. On the wiki it says here that it was put under review, and it was actually put under review a couple of times, but then deleted. Potentially the same reason as Ronald, like I mentioned before. Maybe McDonald's stepped in and was like, you can't use our stuff, And with that being said, here in the last section of other games that I can really fit into a category. First up is actually a very new game being Rocketeers by Banamo, the same people behind Jailbreak. And this game's kind of interesting. Banamo hyped this game up like crazy, it was kind of big in the community. People are saying Jailbreak is launching like a new game after all these years, and it was very hyped and anticipated. However, if we look here, the game did well to start, 7 million visits, but died out. It has like 50 people active. And this one just seems kind of confusing. It seems like they put a lot into the game and stuff like that. They tried their hardest, and it's actually like a pretty well-made game. However, it seems no interest for it. People seem to get bored of it quick. I guess the concept on paper seems pretty fun, but the players' response to it doesn't seem like they enjoyed it as much. And overall, just a disappointing launch, which is kind of sad to see. They put a lot into this game. Speaking of which, next week is the games from Pixel Playground, which if you aren't aware, is a collaborative group from Creecraft and Mystery Member Carl. And they had this big thing when they announced it a few years ago, or like a year ago, where they're like, we're gonna make a bunch of Roblox games, and they didn't really work out. I mean, the YouTube is working out, but the game side of things isn't really working out. The first one being Game Show just fully died out, but then they launched a new game, as we can see here, being Pet Collector, which is still updating stuff like that. And it did good when launched, you know, like 1 million visits, but not many people playing it. And for some reason, so far, Pixel Playground isn't really able to land on these games. And with that being said, our last game being Airplane Story.
Airplane Story, bro, that's one of the biggest ones ever.
And the reason it's died is the reason almost every story game I feel like dies out over time. Number one, it was big on YouTube, so a lot of people already knew the story and watched YouTubers play the story, so they didn't want to play it themselves. And then number two, stories kind of have no replayability. Once you play the story, that's the story, you know? There's only so much times you can play it over and over again, so a lot of people play it once, maybe twice, and then they're done. And in general, with that being said, Roblox games die out from time to time. Some of the biggest games are dying, some games were around for years and died out, some games got boring. That's kind of what just happened, and that's how Roblox works, you know? No hate to the developers or anything like that. It's not a bad thing, it's kind of interesting to look at. And if you want to look at more Roblox games, check out my entire playlist here, where you can check out the entire series, and I'll see you in the next one.
Anyways, that's all for this video. I want to see more game content and more reviews. Make sure to subscribe. And yeah, see you next episode, buddy. And goodbye. Toodaloo. Bye bye.